How does a silent voice make us better people? You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who has watched this film without bawling their eyes out. In fact, I'd argue they'd have to be a psychopath not to. There are many stories that exist to inspire and better us. This is the purpose of my channel, to share with you the stories I believe ameliorate our lives. And there is no better story to do this than a silent voice. A silent voice makes us better people by guiding and teaching us. Its story is a life lesson. It's like a book of wisdom. A silent voice's very theme is about change. It's the struggle to overcome and transform into something more. This message is conveyed through the journey we're led on by the characters. They are what make the story so influential. Each one has a unique flaw innate to them that they endure and overcome. Their personal conflicts are all relatable struggles, even for Naoka and Miki. It is in their quandary that the meaning of the story manifests. The true value of the narrative reaches us because of the authenticity of its characters, whose depth and realism allow us to connect with them and learn from their experiences. It's their transformation that resonates with us and guides us toward betterment of our own. Essentially, a silent voice induces our desire to improve because its characters symbolize role models or mentors. We'll start with Shoya since he's the protagonist. And also, he's straightforward to explain. Whether it's regret, self-hatred, depression, or anxiety he faces, I'm going to centralize his issues into a singular word: guilt, as this is the primary struggle motivating him to seek redemption. Shoya's conflict begins after he bullies Shoko, and it wrestles with him for years before he decides to amend it. This feeling of guilt dictated his thoughts so substantially that he viewed himself as worthless. He felt he was responsible for Shoko's unhappiness, and further responsible for anything bad happened upon others. Part of his reason for bullying her was to feel significant, but it didn't provide any benefit to his life, and it only further fed the negative perception he has of himself. His plan was to apologize to Shoko, and then afterwards extinguish his pernicious existence. However, in the moment of their reunified encounter, another eminent feeling of his overwrites this, and he instead asks if they can be friends, a gesture of hers he refused long ago. This then starts his journey of redemption and change. With the help of Shoko, Shoya discovers his worth. We see this occur in the climactic moment of the film, where he raises his head and stands up straight, finally meeting the gaze of those around him. Shoya's transformation teaches us that redemption is not about erasing the past, but growing beyond it. We cannot change the past, but we also are not bound by it. Our actions today, not the mistakes of yesterday, determine who we become. Shoya goes from victimizer to protector. What we learn from this is that even amongst our sin, we are still worthy of happiness. And as I'm saying this, I realize Shoya's repentance kind of reflects why Jesus died on the cross. What Shoya's story also emphasizes is the importance of human connection, how reaching out to others, despite fear and insecurity, can lead to healing. If it wasn't for his friends, Shoya would have never figured out how to conquer his problems. It's through them, their willingness to stand by his side and see the good in him, that he is able to succeed. Don't underestimate the power of family and friends, for their presence gives you the encouragement to survive. Though it should be self-evident that we all deserve our own happiness, not all of us can see it for ourselves, unless someone else leads us to water. Shoya and Shoko are two sides of the same coin. I'll describe Shoko's main flaw, however, as self-blame, since this is the primary force responsible for her giving up on life. Shoko's deafness was the cause of her parents' divorce. Her father left because he's a piece of He left over a refusal to be accountable for her disability, yet the mom isn't innocent either. Her festering resentment toward his departure precluded her from learning sign language, and she harbored a silent grudge toward her own daughter, Shoko, for being a reminder of her misery. Despite none of this being Shoko's fault, witnessing this became the fulcrum of her self-blame. It's as if she views herself as a curse, to bring unhappiness to others from her mere presence. This is why she apologizes to everyone who's distressed, even if not directed toward her. The most notable example of this is when she holds up her notebook to Shoya with the words written "I'm sorry" across it before he throws it into the pond. We see her apologize repeatedly throughout the entire story, until the fireworks, when she gives her last apology to Shoya. And if it wasn't for Shoya saving her, she wouldn't have realized how important her presence really is to another's life. Through Shoya, Shoko discovers her worth. She learns that she's not a burden to anyone, but rather a person who heals others. What we learn from her story is that, no matter how valueless we perceive ourselves as, there will always be value in us seen by someone else. I'm reminded of a line by one of the most profound films I've ever watched, Korieda's Afterlife. I searched desperately inside myself for any memory of happiness. Now, 50 years later, I've learned I was a part of someone else's happiness. What a wonderful discovery. No matter how insignificant you feel, you are someone else's happiness. Tomohiro struggles with possessiveness. His frantic and pushy nature often makes him off-putting to others, leading to frequent rejection. In response to this, he adopts a persona of confidence, showing off his charisma and exaggerating his popularity. But this need for validation manifests as clinginess and obsession, particularly in his attachment to Shoya. He refuses to let anyone come between them, fearing that his one close friend might prefer someone else over him. This behavior is especially evident in his interactions with Satoshi. However, after Shoya's accident and their confrontation in the bathroom stall, Shoya reassures Tomohiro that he is a good friend and that his presence has always been meaningful. This moment instills in Tomohiro the understanding that he is not a loser. He doesn't need to put on a facade to be valued. People appreciate him for his honesty and genuine nature. Tomohiro's transformation teaches us that authenticity attracts the right people into our lives. No matter how awkward or unconventional we may be, being true to ourselves will lead us to those who genuinely care about us. His journey demonstrates that by remaining honest, kind, and supportive, we will find friendships built on sincerity. There is nothing wrong with being that weird friend. The fact that Tomohiro is the most liked character in A Silent Voice should tell you everything. For Miyoko, her problem is passiveness. She is avoidant of conflict and shies away from confrontation, going as far as to completely remove herself from people if necessary. When Miyoko was the only one to openly volunteer to learn sign language, she became an easy target for ridicule, specifically from Naoka. In response, Miyoko chose to abandon her newfound friendship with Shoko by transferring schools, hoping to escape Naoka. Yet, her attempt to run from the problem proved futile, as years later, Naoka transferred to the same school. Miyoko's story teaches us that avoidance does not solve our problems. If anything, it only allows them to grow in severity. Running away offers no preparation for the moment the conflict will inevitably resurface. However, Naoka and Miyoko eventually become really good friends, discovering that they share common interests, like a passion for fashion. This experience reveals the flaw in her avoidant nature. By confronting challenges instead of fleeing from them, she is able to find meaningful connections she never anticipated. Miyoko's struggle with avoidance is fully resolved after Shoya saves Shoko. She's inspired by his courage, and it's in this that she realizes she cannot continue to retreat from conflict. She must face it head on. After all, this is what costed her years of friendship with Shoko. From that moment forward, she resolves to abandon her avoidant tendencies permanently and approach challenges earnestly. We learn from Miyoko's journey that conflict is an inevitable part of life, and the more we try to evade it, the more control it gains over us. But when we choose to confront it, we often find that our fears were largely imagined, and sometimes, what we once perceived as a burden may turn out to be one of life's greatest blessings. Satoshi's main flaw is intolerance. This could be framed as a temperament issue or anger problem, but intolerance best captures the core of his character struggle. Satoshi harbors a deep hatred for bullies, refusing to tolerate them in any capacity. As he tells Shoya, "If I saw them right now, I'd punch them in the face," despite the irony that he wants to be friends with Shoya, a former bully. Ironically, Satoshi's extreme intolerance of bullies causes him to behave very similarly to one. His anger drives him to lash out violently, as seen when he throws water into a teacher's face or hurls a girl's backpack across the park because she was picking on someone else. I know someone needs to stand up to bullies, but this seems like unhealthy behavior to me. You can't be a bully even if it's to bully other bullies. Satoshi's problems stem from issues with his past. As a child, he was mocked for his thick eyebrows, which led to a deep resentment toward not only bullies, but any bystander. Anyone he felt was complicit he had no compassion for. He was blinded by his hatred. However, it is through his friendship with Shoya that he is encouraged to change. By the end of the story, we see him become more forgiving and open-minded, realizing that even those who were once bullies can grow into better people. We cannot let bitterness grant us the right to pass judgment upon those we arbitrarily condemn. Satoshi's journey teaches us that we should all be compassionate and provide grace to others, even when we may be justified in not doing so. And as a side note, as much as I prefer the anime, this is the one time I will admit they screwed up his character in the adaptation, because we only see this side of him in the manga. You know, Satoshi is acquainted with two individuals he's meant to despise, as his other friend is Miki. Miki is self-absorbed, egotistical, and manipulative, but the label that most accurately describes her character is narcissist. Miki's self-image is her life source. It influences the way she behaves in crowds, which is why she was subtly involved in the bullying of Shoko. Her actions, though not direct, were motivated only to curate her appearance favorably for her peers. She is controlled by her perception. Whenever someone highlights her negative traits or habitual deception, she pulls out the victim card. This was blatantly done in one of the most narcissistic acts I've ever seen in fiction. You know what scene I'm referring to. It's the one that made us all loathe her character. Miki will deny or ignore her own wrongdoings, perceiving herself as blameless and perfect, going as far as to lie or attack others just to save face. This attitude is as prevalent at the end of the story as it was at the beginning. She never fully overcomes her narcissism. This is why it's hard to like her character. However, Miki's story reveals something peculiar, the idea of acknowledgement. Miki shifts from self-image to self-awareness. While she never takes full accountability for her flaws, she does acknowledge that she has them. Rather than obsessing over her public appearance, she starts to show more sincerity. Though her acts of kindness were mere tactical stratagem, by the finale, we see her display genuine support and compassion toward her friends. She drops the good person persona and instead actually tries to be one. Miki has a lot of negative traits. She requires a spotlight, needs to take initiative and control everything, and refuses to own up to her mistakes. However, she teaches us an important lesson. The key to overcoming our flaws is by first acknowledging them. It's recognition. Miki never stops being a bitch, but she enacts the most crucial phase of growth, the first step. If you're struggling, simply admitting it is already progress. And finally, the main antagonist, Naoka. Naoka has a lot of problems. Frustration, jealousy, guilt, envy. But ultimately, all of these stem from one core issue, resentment. At first, I thought her primary struggle was jealousy. After all, it doesn't take a SpaceX engineer to recognize her crush on Shoya. But her issues are not that shallow, and run much deeper. What Naoka desires is a return to the old. When they were kids, Naoka's life was structured. The time she spent with Shoya and his friends was special. However, Shoko's transfer into their school disrupted this order, and it eventually escalated to their falling out. Now, was any of this Shoko's fault? Of course, not. But in Naoka's eyes, she saw Shoko as the reason for why this occurred, not considering in what way she may have been responsible. This is the cause of her animosity toward Shoko, and why she orchestrates Shoya's reconciliation with his former friends. Of course, Naoka knows it's her fault. That's why she asks Shoya,
"Do you hate me?"
And he replies,
"Probably."
But instead of getting a clue like a normal person, she takes her frustration out on Shoko. Naoka perceives Shoko as a persistent reminder of a life irreversibly marred. No matter what, nothing is going to change that. Yet despite her hostility, when she witnesses the depth of Shoya and Shoko's connection, she realizes something within her must change. Her transformation mirrors Miki's. It's not a dramatic reversal, but rather an acknowledgement of her own flaws. This is why she tells Shoya,
"I just can't bring myself to like Shoko."
Her hatred for Shoko does not dissipate, nor is she seeking to alter her perception of Shoko. The life she once cherished was taken from her, and she has no intention of setting aside that loss. But she takes small steps, learning to sign, albeit only to insult Shoko, and choosing to remain part of the group. If this is the life Shoya has chosen, surrounded by people like Shoko, then Naoka decides she is willing to change, if only for that purpose. Bitterness and grudges offer no resolution, and resentment is a slow-killing poison. Forgiving and forgetting may be too much to ask, but that isn't always necessary. Growth does not require erasing pain, it requires accepting it. True healing lies in acknowledging what has transpired and striving to make the present worth it, despite that. I believe each character possessing a unique innate flaw is intentional by the author. The story's central theme is redemption, enduring, overcoming, and striving to be better than we once were. Shoya isn't the only one who finds redemption. The story is trying to show us how we are all capable of being something more. We just have to try. Every character shows, through their efforts, that change is always possible. This gives us the revelation that we can do the same. The most important aspect, not to be neglected, of a silent voice is the act that sets everything in motion, the catalyst for change. None of the characters become better people on their own. They are shaped by their connections with one another. All of the characters lean on each other to aid in improving. As the protagonist, Shoya serves as the catalyst for everyone else's transformation. His actions inspire those around him to recognize their flaws and strive for something more. But just as he influences them, they influence him. His friends are the ones who truly help him change. This is why, before the credits roll, we see a montage of their faces, ending with Shoko, because their presence made Shoya's transformation possible, just as he made theirs possible. Each character utilizes another to grow, mature, and heal. We cannot fight our battles alone. Shoya tried at the beginning of the story, and Shoko attempted it near the end. Both failed. It is through the love and care of others, and through caring for and loving them, that we become better people. A silent voice does this for us. Just as we lean on others in life, we also lean on these stories to guide us. This is their purpose. It's not fortuitous that stories change us. This is the reason a silent voice remains so revered. The anime does more than just resonate. It elicits growth and reform. The story highlights the genuine side of humanity and has an honest perspective on life and struggle, which connects us deeply to its meaning. Its narrative carries an indelible message that is universally truthful. It's from this introspective experience that we feel emotionally different, like we've gained something. A silent voice imparts on us the desire to reach further. I think at its core, A Silent Voice is a story of healing, and this is beautifully conveyed through its characters, where we learn what it truly means to live. And this is how a silent voice makes us better people. Of course, none of this is possible without a silent voice being so resonant. So if you're curious how a silent voice resonates with you, I encourage you to check out this video I made. Regardless though, thank you for watching this one.